Buying a used vehicle, that's a dangerous game. There's a lot of things to look out for, whether you're looking for a new daily driver, a track car, or a weekend cruiser. And today, we're going to show you how to do your own pre-purchase inspection before clicking that Buy Now button. Follow me into the shop and we'll show you what to look for. Talking about PPI, there's a couple things you want to consider, and that's going to be obviously the vehicle that you're going to be purchasing, but the things to look out for, which is going to be the exterior condition of the car, the interior condition of the car, the mechanical condition of the car, as well as the underbody of the car. If you have the opportunity to bring any tools with you, at a very minimum, a floor jack and jack stand are going to take you a long way. To get started, we're going to cover the exterior basics of a PPI. Things to look out for. It's almost going to be kind of like a FBI-like situation here. We're going to be looking for evidence of what kind of life the vehicle that you're looking at has lived and what you can find. So let's start with the exterior. Starting with the exterior of the vehicle, the first and obvious thing we're going to look at is the paint. What condition is the paint in? Is it swirl heavy? Is it nice and polished? Is it sun faded? Those are going to be key indicators of what kind of life the vehicle has lived. You can have a very nice clean looking car that's lived every single car wash going through the swirl installer, aka the automated car wash. And the paint's going to reflect that. You can have a car that's been taken care of by someone that really appreciates the vehicle. Maybe they did a 2-bucket method the whole life. And sure, the paint's going to have a few blemishes in it, especially if it's a daily driver status vehicle. But you'll be able to tell the stark difference of a car that's been hand washed versus a car that's been going through a car wash. Focusing on the exterior as well, we want to look at the accoutrements, if you will. What are the condition of the headlight lenses? What are the condition of the trim, either around the glass, the windshield, the mirrors? Even the wiper blade arms, something as simple as what kind of shape the wiper blade arms can tell you what kind of life your vehicle that you're looking at purchasing has lived. Another thing to look for is the front end of the vehicle. A ton of rock chips can state a couple things. One, that the person followed very closely behind the following car in front of them. Two, that more than likely it was used a lot on the highway, seen a lot of chips. Or three, depending on where the car is located, it saw a lot of rural road, dirt roads, gravel, that kind of stuff, which also makes you want to think, what else could be either caked or affected by that, meaning the underside could be blasted with dirt, could be contaminated, could be rusty, but we'll get there. Moving forward, we're going to talk about the rest of the exterior of the car. We're looking at door handles, we're looking at the release trunk handles. Sometimes those are rubberized components. Are they broken? Are they marred up? Are they scratched? Or are they still nice and tight? Next on our cosmetic exterior portion of this PPI, without getting too into the mechanical, is the condition of the wheels. Obviously, a nice clean wheel, no pitting in the finish is going to be a good thing, a good sign. Wheels with heavier pitting, especially if they're original wheels to the car, or blemishes or scuffs on the tires, are going to give you a great representation of what kind of life the vehicle that you're looking at has lived. Nice clean wheel, probably someone that took their time to clean the wheels, do their brakes on time, you know, not drive metal to metal pads on the disc, causing a ton of metal pollution and debris and contaminants onto the surface finish of the wheel. You want to avoid those. Continuing on with the basic exterior of the vehicle, the other thing that is very easy to look at and will give you a good telltale sign of what kind of mechanical condition your vehicle is the rear portion of the exhaust where it exits. If you have a car that is covered in soot, maybe it's stained, that can mean that it's either burning a lot of oil, running super rich. If you have an exhaust tip that is super cruddy looking, it's filled with oil, or maybe it's filled with coolant residue, meaning a bad head gasket. Those are the things that you want to look out for. An exhaust can tell you a lot of things about how a car runs and what kind of mechanical condition that the engine is in. Next on our laundry list of PPI basic exterior is going to be the door jambs. These are my silent killer. These are the things that most people don't consider or think about. Nice clean door jambs are always what you want to see. You want to see them not full of rust, contaminants, dings, dents, meaning large things have been thrown in and out of the vehicle, as well as giving you signs that it's probably garage kept and or it gets washed frequently, versus the opposite, dirty door jambs with a nice clean exterior means the car was just washed before coming to you for your PPI. It means that it's something that people don't really consider, which, you know, we're getting really nitty gritty with this, but clean door jambs, yes. Dirty door jambs, not necessarily bad. Just something to, again, keep adding on to the back of your mind. All right, the paint's a little beat up, you know, the headlights are a little faded, the door jambs are a little dirty, the wheels are a little baked in brake dust. maybe it hasn't had the best maintenance. Maybe it hasn't had the best cosmetic care. Not necessarily a bad car, just not the best of the best. All right, my good people, next is gonna be the interior portion of the vehicle. Now, this is arguably where you're gonna spend the most of your time in your potentially new vehicles. So you wanna make sure it is A, exactly what you want, and B, in the kind of condition that you want, especially based on what you're gonna be paying for the vehicle. Starting with the steering wheel. The steering wheel is the most used and touched thing inside of the vehicle, aside from the pedals and or the shifter. The condition of the vehicle is gonna tell you a lot as well about what kind of life the vehicle has lived. A nice leather finish is always a good sign. A worn out grip or a scuffed up grip, obviously you want to try to avoid. We have tons of oils and different creams and lotions and things on our skin that can deteriorate this material over time. So having a good grip on the steering wheel is going to be a #1 thing. Continuing on with the buttons, obviously the finish on the center console. If you have standard buttons like this E91 does, you want to see what kind of condition they are. A lot of times vehicles have soft touch material which starts to peel off over time. So in your case, if the vehicle is in good shape, then that's a good sign. If it's pretty worn, that's something you can potentially bring into your PPI report and hopefully get a better deal on the vehicle. You want to touch the buttons. Any buttons that are sticky or don't come back, stay away from. Coffee is a popular killer of those, or soda, or just any kind of sticky tea or juice or liquid. So make sure you avoid that, and if so, bring it up during your report before you make your purchase. Continuing on with that is going to be the finish of the dash. Now, this is something that is going to be dependent on the vehicle you're looking at, but a nice dash in good shape means that it's either not seen too much sun, it's made out of good materials, or it's lived inside a garage for most of its life. If it's faded, cracked, then more than likely it's seen a lot of sun. Just something to keep in mind. Again, it's all about bargaining before buying the vehicle and seeing, the condition of the life that it's lived and the kind of care that it's received. Another big thing that goes without saying is the condition of the seats, whether you have fabric seats or you have leather seats that you're looking at, whether they've been conditioned or if they've been cleaned or just neglected their whole lives. That's an easy thing that you can visually look at. You don't want a seat that is too oily or shiny or smooth. You don't want the Armor All touch. That's not really a good thing. So try to avoid that. And if you have that, but the car's in good shape, you can clean it up. There's materials and chemicals and products that you can use to bring that back to life, as long as there's no big damage, but something that you can use in your bargaining power during your PPI. And continuing on with the whole leather theme, if the car is a leather interior vehicle, again, take a look at the parking brake handle if it has one. A lot of the newer cars have electronic parking brakes. Make sure it works. Take a look at the shifter. Make sure nothing feels funny. If it's a manual car, roll it through the gears. Get a feel for it. This can tell you if the car has worn out bushings or not, in a manual car at least. In an automatic, cycle it through the gears. Obviously inside the vehicle, not only do you want to check on the conditions of the buttons and controls you're going to be using, but also the surrounding materials. Again, we covered the dash. If the vehicle is equipped with a sunroof, look at the headliner. Is the headliner clean? Is it sagging? Is it stained? Does it look like perhaps it's letting water in? Those are some of the things that you're going to want to focus on with a car with a large sunroof, moonroof, panoramic roof, opening roof. If it has the option to open, then there's the chance that water can be let in. So pay attention to that. On a black finish headliner, it's going to be a little bit tougher to see. Grab a flashlight, put it up to the material, and look for any signs of staining. Along with the sunroof, you also want to make sure that it works if it's something that you're interested in using. And speaking of working, check every single switch and button inside the car. You don't want to do this on your test drive while you're driving. You want to focus on the car and the road ahead of you when you're doing the test driving portion of this. But while you're doing the visual and touch and feel inspection of the car, touch every button. Do the windows work? Do the mirrors work? Are they powered? Are they manual? Does the radio work? Does the HVAC control work? Can you get heat? Will you get AC if you flip everything over? Sometimes blend doors can get stuck, servo motors can break, and those are things that you're not going to think about until you're already halfway home after making your purchase. So make sure every single thing works. Make sure the central locking works if it has it, and so on and so forth. If you're looking at a vehicle with heated seats, make sure those operate well as well. It's just a matter of taking your time, pressing every single button, and of course doing this before you drive. You don't want to do any of this stuff while you're driving. If everything checks out, your headliner is in good shape, the interior is in good shape, or it's at good shape enough for the price point that you're shopping at, then let's continue on and talk about one of the next big and huge important things. That's going to be the mechanicals under the hood. Moving on to the next best and most important part of this PPI is going to be the under the hood portion. This is going to tell us a lot about the vehicle, just as the exterior did. It's going to tell us what kind of condition it's in, what kind of life it's lived, and what kind of care and maintenance it has received. A couple things to consider before you start diving into the car is what kind of vehicle it is. Some cars are known for certain issues. If you watched any of our buyer's guides or our N52 buyer's guides, you can go in with a good idea of what to look for before you approach the vehicle. So do your research, do your homework, watch your buyer's guides. It's going to take you a long, long way. Again, very vehicle specific, but still very helpful. In this case, another thing to consider is the vehicle and where it's located and how you are approaching it. Meaning, if you're driving or flying in to look at a car, are you meeting the seller at their home, at a public place? Is the car already warmed up and up to temperature? Is the car stone cold? What you can check and what you can look at is going to be very dependent on those two situations. If the car is stone cold, which is ideally the best case scenario, you're going to really see its true colors come through. Oftentimes a car can have a slight knock that goes away when it warms up, or maybe the expansion tank has had some sort of additives poured in it you can't check when it's hot, if you get what I'm getting to. A nice cold vehicle is always the best vehicle to approach. So if you can set that up before you go look at the vehicle with the seller, then that's going to be the way to go. That way you can get your hands in there, visually look, you're not worrying about burning yourself, and you can see what the car really is like from a cold start. If it's easy to check, pull the air filter inside of the air filter box, take a look at the condition of that. If the vehicle is equipped with a dipstick, pull the dipstick. If the car has an easy to access oil fill, go ahead and pull the oil fill. Depending on the type of car it is, you'll be able to either see inside of the valve train. Oftentimes they have a cover or a shield for the oil, which is going to prevent that, so that's not going to get you very far. But if you can see inside, grab a flashlight. That's the best thing to do. If your vehicle has a cabin air filter in the engine bay that you're looking to purchase and it's easy to inspect, that's a simple thing to look at as well. That's something that should be replaced every 2 years. If it's in bad, smelly shape or moldy, then more than likely that shows a bit of a sign of neglect, which again we've talked about on the outside of the car. But if it looks to be in good shape, then that's always a positive. Take a look at the drive belt system if it's something that's visible. Take a look at the condition of the belt and the condition of the pulleys, idlers, anything that you can get your eyes on. If it looks faded or rusty or dried and cracked, then more than likely it has not been serviced in a long time. If it looks to be in good shape, then obviously you can continue on with that. Take a look at the coolant hoses. If you can see the radiator, a lot of them are blocked by the radiator support or electric or mechanical fans. Take a look at that as well. The condition of the fins, obviously you don't want any fins to be missing. You don't want any dried coolant at any of the seams where the hoses go or any of the connections are. If the vehicle is equipped with hydraulic steering, check the condition of the fluid and the level. Obviously bring a small towel with you. That's something that anyone can travel with. Take a look at that and see what kind of shape that's in. Speaking of fluids, the next and most important one that gets often neglected, similar to door jambs, is going to be the brake fluid. Take a look at the Brake Master cylinder reservoir. In this case, on this E91, it's underneath the cowling. Take a look at the condition of the fluid. Is it nice and light, maybe a light golden color? Then it's probably in okay shape. Is it dark and brown and looking like molasses? Then more than likely it's never been replaced. That's going to affect not only the performance of the vehicle, but all the components in the hydraulic system of the brakes. Bad fluid can lead to a failing ABS pump, it can lead to a failing caliper, failing soft lines, all that stuff you want to avoid. So keep that in mind. Maybe you can use it for bargaining, but the brake fluid is going to be critical when it comes to that. Continue on with fluids and vehicles being nice and cold. This is something that you can really only do on a cold vehicle, is checking the expansion tank and or the radiator cap, depending on the type of vehicle you're looking at, and seeing what kind of condition the coolant is in. Oftentimes people trying to do a quick flip will throw in an additive if the car has a mechanical problem, maybe a bad head gasket or a cracked head, something that's starting to go. And you'll be able to tell if anything's been poured in there. Open up the cap. First, start by just looking at the level, especially if it's a clear container. Is it at the proper level? Is it too low? Is it overfilled? Does there have any sort of glitter in it? It's usually any sort of head gasket repair is going to have some sort of glitter to it. If you did your research beforehand, then you'll know what kind of coolant should be in the vehicle. If it's a Toyota, maybe it'll have red or pink. If it's a Mercedes, they're going to have blue or pink. BMW, up until the newer cars, have blue coolant, that kind of stuff. So if the color looks good and it looks to be in good shape, that's going to be a good telltale sign. But again, something you can only do if the vehicle is nice and cold. If the vehicle is hot, then you're not going to be able to do that. Speaking of nice and cold, you're also going to want to check for any leaks on the side of the motor, on the front, the back, anything that you can get your eyes on. Valve covers tend to be a #1 offender. For example, in the N52, you can pretty much see around the whole passenger side and front of the block. And anything that starts to leak, usually on these type of engines, goes straight to the exhaust manifold, which you then smell, which would be something you could smell on your test drive. That's another big thing. If you're pulling up to a car, whether you've already test driven it or the person is meeting you somewhere, smell the car, literally smell it. It sounds weird, but do you smell a lot of oil? Do you smell a lot of fuel? Do you smell a lot of coolant? Those are all indicators of a potential leak or failure on the vehicle itself. All right, my good people, simulating the floor jack and jack stand that you could hopefully bring to your PPI. The first thing we're gonna look at is for any play in the wheels. You're gonna wanna do this both in the front and the rear of the vehicle, all 4 corners ideally. We're just gonna simulate it on the front right to give you an idea. The first thing we're gonna do is check for wheel bearing play and or tie rod play. To do that, simply grab the left and right side of the wheel, try to shimmy them back and forth, left and right, and up and down. If you feel or hear any excessive play, up and down is going to be a good indicator of a bad wheel bearing. Left and right is going to be a good indicator of worn out tie rods. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't be a severely worn out control arm bushing as well, depending on the type of vehicle you're working with. While you have it jacked up too, this is a great time to take a look at the brakes. Perhaps you can't get the wheel off. Do a visual inspection of the surface of the brake disc. If you can, depending on the style wheels that are on the vehicle, take a look at the brake caliper. Oftentimes you can see the pads and you can see how much meat is left on them. Visually, anything less than 2 millimeters are going to need replacing. And something that's super easy to check, and something that you may have seen if you've watched one of our brake job DIYs, is if the rotors have heavy lips on the inside or outside of the disc, then more than likely they're going to need replacing. Obviously, when you drive the vehicle, do a hard brake test. If you feel any pulsation at the steering wheel, that could be a good telltale sign of failed rotors, but also worn out suspension components, so don't rule those out just yet. Another thing that's easy to inspect is the condition of the suspension, whether the car is equipped with dampers, shocks, springs, whatever it may be. Look at the finish on them. Are they leaky? Are the bump stops torn? Are the boots torn? Is anything rusted? Does anything look like it's been replaced recently? All these things can help you with your bargaining and or deal making when looking to purchase a vehicle. Continuing on with the suspension, my good people, pretend we're on the floor with you there, looking at the vehicle that you're hopefully going to purchase. Looking at things like control arms, tie rods, sway bar end links, the struts assemblies from a different point of view, the knuckle axles if the car is front wheel drive, rear wheel drive, all wheel drive, you're going to have axles. Looking at the boots, any signs that may have shown prior damage. Let's just say as an example, I know we're talking about a replaced headlight versus a non-replaced headlight. Damage can go further than just cosmetic. Let's just pretend for a moment that all these arms are nice and shiny and new. The knuckle was new perhaps, even the axle, but then the driver's side looks the way this looks currently. That's a good telltale sign that something has been replaced due to an accident. Now, let's just say that just this tie rod was nice and new and the one on the driver's side looked old and weathered. That is not a great sign, as that is showing that something was replaced just to fix it. It wasn't replaced in pairs as it should be, meaning the maintenance and attention was put into the car, time and money, all that good stuff. So you kind of want to avoid that. If you're seeing one tie rod here, one control arm there, maybe one ball joint's nice and the other one's not, then more than likely that's something you want to step away from. You want to get into a car that has the proper maintenance done to it, the proper repairs, and not just shoddy piecemeal situation. So keep that in mind. Now, just as a quick example and something worth noting, depending on the vehicle you're looking at, sometimes if it still has a skid plate or splash shield, removing it will only give you, or will give you all of the visual access you need. In this case, these type of cars have a sniffing plate, which you're not going to be removing while doing the PPI unless you have new hardware for it or you're on a lift with the proper tools. But regardless, removing the splash shield still gives us a good view at the condition of the subframe, the sway bar bushings on this particular vehicle, some of the power steering and coolant lines, as well as the oil pan, the water pump. And in this case, specific to the E9X platform, if you know the N52, then you know for a fact the oil pan is going to be leaking. Now this one's not leaking only because we did a DIY on it recently. However, this will give you a good view of kind of the overall health of the engine. If you have an oil leak, then you're going to be able to see that now. If I were buying this car for myself, I'd be arguing in price over the condition of these power steering lines, which have seen better days. So that's something to watch out for. The condition of the belts are easy to check here. And again, all dependent on the type of vehicle you're looking at, but removing the under panel, if you can, is going to be a great way at looking at the bottom half of the mechanicals of the engine bay. With that, we're going to continue on down the rest of the car, looking at the transmission side of things, applicable if or not, depending on the kind of car it is. If it's a front-wheel drive vehicle, everything will more than likely be up here, but something rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive will hopefully be just heading towards the back. So we're going to want to look for any leaks, any markings of any service of fluids or mounts or bushings, that kind of stuff. For example, this car, everything's been torque sealed since it was worked on last, so we can see all the markings on that, which is always a nice sign. But sometimes you can tell if the hardware looks like it's never been touched, especially drain plugs or fill plugs, then more than likely that has not been serviced. We're going to continue on and just following the rest of the car, looking obviously for any holes in the underside, any damage to the body, any rust, that sort of thing you obviously want to try to avoid and or bargain with. In this case, if everything checks out, you can continue moving on to the rear of the car, and similar to the front of the suspension, we're going to be looking at the rear end, the rear shocks, control arms, the axle, whatever it is that it may have. There's a differential back there. Check the differential the same way you're checking the transmission and the engine. Are there any leaks? Is there any grime or built up residue around the seals? Are the boots torn? Those sorts of things are going to help you out in the long run. And with that, my good people, that is going to conclude our visual inspection for our PPI today. Obviously, the last thing left to do here is take the car for a drive. Again, if you're doing a cold start PPI, meaning the car is nice and cold, you're going to where it lives and it's going to be turned on for the first time, listen to the engine, listen for any weird noises or rattles or knocks. Look at the exhaust, look for any puffs of clouds. Look at the exhaust, look for any puffs of blue smoke, white smoke, or black smoke. None of that is obviously ideal, so that way you can get a better feel for the vehicle. Let it get to temperature, let it get warmed up, make sure that the cooling system's operating properly, that the thermostat's opening up, the water pump's doing its thing. You don't want a car that overheats. And most importantly, make sure that the car rides and drives exactly as you want it. Hopefully you learned a thing or two today, and hopefully this will help you in your future purchases. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments on what we did today, leave those in the comment section below. Or if you have another couple basic PPI notes to add, something that anyone can easily do, drop those in the section below as well. And if you like this video, please consider subscribing. We make new ones all the time. As always, thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.